For a few years now, the iPad Air has been in a weird place on the iPad lineup. It's not the cheapest and it's certainly not the most powerful either. But then, this happened. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Fed and welcome back to another video. And today I'm gonna give you all the reasons why this is the best iPad for most people. So let's get to the point. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. The iPad Air 4 looks nearly identical to the 2018 iPad Pro. The only noticeable difference is that the sleep wake button on the iPad Air 4 is shiny and bigger instead of the regular button. That is because the iPad Air 4 does not have a dedicated home button and it doesn't support Face ID, so the biometric scanner comes in the form of the sleep wake button. Touch ID on the iPad Air 4 works well, but if you're used to Face ID, it's definitely gonna take some time to get used to it. I personally like Face ID better, but Touch ID on the sleep wake button opens the possibility that maybe one day we'll get both in one single device. I don't know if we'll ever see that, but it would be awesome. Another difference is that the iPad Air 4 has a couple millimeters more of a bezel than the iPad Pro, but honestly, it's barely noticeable, and that is only if you really focus on it, but still hard to see. When you hold the iPad Air 4 without any case, it's hard to believe that so much technology can be so light. And I honestly love this design, and I'm happy to see that the flat edges are back in the game on the iPad, on the iPhone, and now on the new iMac. Another thing worth mentioning is that the iPad Air 4 has 5 color options, 3 of them super colorful, and they look incredible. This iPad is fast. The iPad Air 4 has some of the latest and best internals available in a tablet. The A14 Bionic chipset performs fantastically well. It opens apps in record times and easily handles multitasking and other complex tasks. The A14 Bionic is newer and in some ways faster than the A12C Bionic found on the current iPad Pros. Not the M1 version though, that's a whole different story. But we have to keep in mind that the iPad Pro comes with 6 GB of RAM and the iPad Air 4 comes with 4 GB of RAM, so demanding programs like video editing and music engineering are gonna perform better on the iPad Pro, but you will still get a very decent and very impressive performance out of this thing. Video games run extremely well, pushing console quality graphics, and the overall experience is great. Although it would be better with a display with a higher refresh rate like the iPad Pro, but the performance is incredible. The iPad Air 4 comes with a 10.9-inch display, which is just a few millimeters smaller than the 11-inch iPad Pro because of a slightly thicker bezel. The iPad Air has a beautiful bright screen that's easy on the eyes. It has the same true tone and 500 nits of brightness. It also has a fully laminated display with anti-reflective coating, which honestly does not make it a lot easier to use outdoors. But it's so much better than the regular iPad, which doesn't have this coating. It has a 60 Hz refresh rate, which is the same as the iPad Air 3, but it doesn't support ProMotion technology, which dynamically ranges from between 60 Hz and 120 Hz. If you have never used an iPad with a ProMotion display, you will never ever notice anything wrong with this display ever. It's so good. But if you put the iPad Air and the iPad Pro side by side, my god, there's a big difference. At a quick glance, you're gonna notice that the iPad Pro has a much smoother feel, and that makes it feel much faster, even if it's not. I really wish that this iPad came with a higher refresh rate because it's, well, perfect. And I do understand that Apple needs to save some features for the Pro models because, well, they need to justify the Pro pricing. But with the introduction of the new iPad Pro with the XDR Liquid Retina, I think it's a matter of time before we see ProMotion in other devices like the iPad Air or maybe the iPhone. So besides the refresh rate, the display on the iPad Air 4 is gorgeous. Colors are vivid and the brightness is great, so you're gonna have a great viewing experience with whatever it is that you're doing. The The iPad Air 4 comes with a 12 megapixel camera with an f1.8 aperture, which is a nice upgrade over the 8 megapixel camera on the previous generation. This means better pictures and better low light photography. The video capabilities of the iPad Air 4 were also upgraded to 4K at 24, 30 or 60 frames per second, which is a good performance for a mid-level iPad. But most people, myself included, are not gonna use this iPad to take pictures or videos. This sort of feature is reserved for a very small group of people. You know what? I don't think I've ever taken a picture with an iPad before. But the camera on the iPad Air 4 is perfectly fine, and you know how the saying goes, the best camera is the one you have with you. It's also worth mentioning that the iPad Air 4 does not come with portrait mode, which is the effect that makes pictures look like they were taken with a DSLR or mirrorless camera. But again, I have never used my iPad to take a single picture ever, but it's nice to know that if someday I have to use the camera on my iPad, the results are gonna be good. The camera is good and reliable, which is the most important thing of all. Ever since the iPad was introduced way back in 2010, the battery life has been good, and this one is no exception. I've been able to constantly use this iPad for 11 hours of regular use before needing a charger, using standard apps, web browsing, and video playback. Battery life is exactly what I've come to expect from an iPad. It's absolutely possible to drain the battery if you use demanding apps or play video games or you use it as a work computer, but you will make it until the end of the day for sure. But if you use it more lightly, you should expect it to go 2 or 3 days before needing to worry. So no complaints at all here. The iPad Air 4 has 2 sets of stereo speakers and the sound quality is good. It's not the best, and the iPad Pro has far better sound quality, but it's still very decent. If you're watching a movie in bed or listening to music and you need to keep the volume down, the experience is incredible. Sound coming out of this iPad in low volume is very clear. If, however, you need to pump up the volume, this iPad is not the best. You can buy a brand new iPad Air 4 for $599 for the 64GB version, and you can get the 256GB version for $749. I didn't really like the storage options. You get 64 or 256 and that's it. Of course, that was a business related decision, but the iPad Air 4 is still very impressive and a good deal overall. The iPad Air 4 is a fantastic device. It simply is. It has the best performance ever on a regular iPad, and it takes most of the iPad Pro features that matter, such as design, Apple Pencil support, improved display, USB-C, and Magic Keyboard support. A few compromises were made, of course, since there is no Face ID, no LiDAR, and no ProMotion display. But these losses don't really diminish the iPad Air 4's incredible abilities. For me, one of the biggest reasons to use an iPad instead of a regular computer is because it's fun and flexible. You can attach or detach a keyboard, and you almost never really have to worry about it crashing or slowing down. Chances are, if you're buying an iPad, you're gonna keep it for many years. Believe me, I still have and use my original iPad from 2010. So spending more on a nicer product is gonna pay off in the long run, and the iPad Air 4 is an excellent choice. And on that note, it's time for me to go. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button, and if you subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. Anyways, I hope you guys are all doing great, and I'll see you on the next one.